The pandemic has changed quite a many things in our lives, not least of which is how we eat. In the church, once a month, usually the first Sunday of the month, before the pandemic, we would celebrate communion. It was a kind of meal, a moment where we would share in a sacred remembrance of Jesus Christ. And in that meal, in that sacrament, we would often have bread and juice, right? We would have loaves of bread sitting on the altar, and we would lift it up to God, give thanks, and then we'd break it open and we would share it with one another. We would take cups of juice and we'd hold it up to God, give thanks, and then share it with one another to remember the covenant that is made with us, the forgiveness that we find in Jesus Christ and in his life. Since the pandemic, we haven't had communion. And I think that's been a good thing. We've been trying to be safe. We've been trying to get back into new routines. We've been trying to learn how to eat, even in new days. And so when we do come back to communion, which I hope will be soon, chances are we will use something like this. I don't know if you've ever seen one of these before, but this is a wonder of innovation. It is a single serve, shelf-stable bread and juice communion cup. See, it has a little wafer inside the plastic up at the top, and so you pull the top piece off, and you get the little wafer out. And then you pull the foil off the juice, and there you have your juice, and then you can take communion. Right? Cool, right? So, I remember seeing these. I can't really say I used them much before the pandemic, but since then I've got a whole box of them, and so I thought I'd try them out. And I can tell you, that wafer does not taste like bread. And this juice, well, hint of grape. And so I look at these and I think, how in the world are we going to remember how good God is? How are we going to share in God's provision or in God's mercy through such a way? Well, I have a good word for you today, and it comes out of John chapter 2. Jesus goes to a wedding in Cana of Galilee. And it's there at this wedding that they run out of wine. Quite the faux pas in the ancient world, by the way. And this is what Jesus does. He's asked to help, and then he told them, he said, "Now draw some out, the water, and take it to the master of the banquet." And they did so, and the master of the banquet tasted the water that had been turned into wine. He did not realize where it had come from, though the servants who had drawn the water knew. And then he called the bridegroom aside and said, "Everyone brings out the choice wine first, and then the cheaper wine after the guests have had too much to drink. But you have saved the best till now." You have saved the best till now. I used to think loaves of bread and big old cups of grape juice were the best that we could offer in a communion moment. But when we get back together for communion, when we get to gather together at God's table and invite our neighbors to do so again, something tells me Jesus will turn water into wine. That even this, in the presence of our friends, in the presence of those that we don't even know, as we share in this and this at God's table, it will become for us Christ's body and Christ's blood. So take heart, even though we may do communion differently, even though we may eat differently, God is still in the business of providing for us. And you know what something tells me? God is going to save the best for last. Hang in there, okay?